Hello grade 12s. Today we are going to wrap up on topic 6 and we will be looking at the cost and revenue of the business. Okay, each business is established with a view of having output, of producing output. And when we are talking about output, we are referring to the quantity of goods or services which are produced in a certain period of time by an industry or a country. And then this output can then be consumed or used for further production. When it is consumed, it is a final product. When it is used for further production, it is an input. Okay, so we have two costs of the business. We have explicit cost and implicit cost. When we are talking about explicit cost, we are referring to those costs of a business that are the actual expenditures of a business that keep the business running. For example, the purchase of raw materials, or when we pay the employees of the business. So those are our explicit costs. They are the actual expenditures of a business. And then we have implicit cost. When we are talking about implicit cost, we are referring to business costs that are including the remuneration for the entrepreneur and our best alternative forgone, the opportunity cost of the factors of production. In a business, in order to produce goods or services, there will always be costs that are incurred. It is important for a business to track those costs in order to be able to determine if whether the business is profitable or not. So when we are talking about total cost, we are referring to the sum, the total of fixed cost and variable cost. In a perfect competition market, total cost consists of fixed cost and variable cost. What is the difference between fixed cost and variable cost? What are we talking about when we are saying fixed cost, when we are saying variable cost? Okay, when we are talking about fixed cost, we are talking about those costs that are constant. They remain the same regardless of the fact that output has changed or not. So this cost, we are saying a business will incur this cost regardless of how many quantities they have produced. An example of a fixed cost is rent. If I'm a bakery business, I'm owning a bakery business and I'm renting a part of the building from a well-established renting property business, every month I must pay that business the rent expense, regardless of me having produced more or less quantities for that month. So the rent expense does not depend on the output produced. It is constant. It will remain the same. If today I produce 10 scones, next week I produce 20 scones, my rent will still be 5,000. If this month I produce 10 cakes, I only have 10 customers, and next month I have 50 customers, they won't say because this month I sold so many cakes, I must pay more rent. No, it remains the same. And then we have those variable costs now. In order for me to produce 50 cakes in comparison to the 10 cakes that I was previously producing, baking, I will need more ingredients. So those ingredients are mainly known as variable costs. These are costs that change with the level of output. As more of a good is produced, the variable cost also increases. And an example of that, we are saying ingredients. In terms of a cake, it will include all the flour, all the margarine, or the butter that I'll be using in a view of producing the cake. Then we have marginal cost. Whenever we are talking about marginal in economics, we are referring to an additional. So if it's marginal cost, it means that it is an additional cost which is incurred after a change in a unit of output. And then we also have average cost. When we are talking about average, we are talking about per quantity. So average cost is total cost divided by the quantity. Yes, a business will incur costs, but at the end of the day, they will also receive revenue, because the aim, the objective of any business is to make profit. So we will also keep track of the total revenue that we are receiving in the business. So total revenue refers to the sum of income which is derived from the sale of output. In order to calculate the total revenue of the business, you will take the price, multiply it by the quantity. Then we have average revenue. Whenever we are talking about average, we divide by the quantity. So we will take total revenue divided by the quantity. Marginal revenue refers to the additional income the firms earn when an additional unit of a product is sold. Like I said, whenever we are coming across the term marginal, we are dealing with an additional unit. Marginal simply means an additional. So in this case, it will be additional income received as a result of an additional unit of a product sold. And our marginal revenue is equal to the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. How do we calculate change? It is current minus previous. And then from our theoretical background, we said that price is equal to average revenue and also equal to marginal revenue. Why is that so? This is because the price of the product remains the same regardless of whether 10 quantities, 2 quantities, 3 quantities are sold. So our price, average revenue, marginal revenue is fixed. Hence, it is represented by a horizontal line. The quantity produced, a firm should continue production if total revenue is greater than the total variable cost of production. It minimizes cost. So if our total revenue is more than our total variable cost, we should continue operating. It means that the business is making a profit. The amount of revenue earned and cost incurred by the business increases with each additional unit produced. That is very true. When you produce more quantities, it means that you're most likely going to receive more revenue. Therefore, the business needs to decide on a level of output where the output realizes the lowest cost and the highest revenue. So in order to determine where our profit maximization point is, we will look at a point whereby we are having the lowest cost, however, receiving the highest revenue. The difference between fixed cost and variable cost can help us understand why a firm can decide to continue production even though the firm is making a loss. So we will be continuing and looking further at profit. When we are talking about profit, which we have been mentioning, we are referring to an addition in comparison to what we had and what we spent. This refers to the positive difference between revenue and cost. There are two types of profit. A business can either make economic profit or normal profit. When we are talking about economic profit, we are referring to a situation whereby our revenue is greater than cost. We are having more revenue than our cost. And the normal profit is whereby the revenue is exactly equal to the cost of the business. So we say economic profit refers to a profit that a business makes that is more than the normal profit, when revenue is more than all of its cost. Normal profit refers to the minimum earnings required to prevent the entrepreneur from leaving the business. When revenue is equal to total cost, an entrepreneur cannot quickly leave the market and say that, no, I'm not seeing anything that I'm making. This is normal profit. Eventually, the business will start making economic profit. So, a Short run equilibrium in a perfect competition market. Okay, all firms should produce at a point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. This is what we call profit maximization. This basically means that you should always produce as long as the marginal revenue, the additional revenue that you are receiving, is much greater than the marginal cost that you are incurring. At a point where they are equal, firms should stop producing. So this will tell us the point at which the quantities we should produce in the industry. If you produce where marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue, you will make a less profit than before. So firms produce where marginal revenue will intersect with marginal cost, that is at a quantity of Q10. So firms will be producing Q10 quantities there. They are selling Q10 at a price of 50 rand. Why? Because this is the average revenue, and it's also the marginal revenue, and it's also the price of the individual producer determined in the industry. So it will be, to calculate total revenue, we will say price multiplied by quantity. So it will be 10 multiplied by 50. This whole area here represents what? This here represents the total revenue that the firm will be receiving. However, does the total revenue show us the whole profit that is made? No, we know that in order for the business to get a revenue, there were costs that were also incurred. So we must calculate the average total cost. Average total cost is represented by the curve here. So we will look at a point where our MC touches our average total cost curve. It touches it at a point here represented by B. At that point, let's find the price. The price is 40. So we are saying our total cost, our average total cost are 40, and the price, average revenue, is 50. So this part here is representing economic profit, because average total cost is equal to Q10 multiplied by 40. So whatever the amount that is there, we were initially having what is this? We were having our total revenue of 500, which was represented by the shaded area. Remember the shaded area? So now our average total costs are 40 multiplied by 10, which is 400. So in order to calculate profit, we will say total revenue minus total cost, whereby our average total costs are 400 and our total revenue was 500. 500 minus 400, therefore this 100 here, this shaded area now here, represents the 100, which is the economic profit of the business. In the long run, a perfect competition market makes normal profit. And when we are talking about normal profit, we are referring to a situation whereby average costs are equal to average revenue. Okay, let us look at it from a graphical perspective. There we are having our average revenue. Our average revenue is represented by the horizontal line. There it is at 50 rand, and then our average cost curve is represented by this cost curve here. This is our average cost curve. Remember, when we want to determine profit, we will look at a point where our average cost is tangent to the marginal cost. In this case, it is tangent at point E, at exactly where our average cost is. So we are saying the business is faced with a normal profit because the average cost here is touching the average revenue. All costs are equal to all revenue, which is represented by 50 rand at quantity Q10. Okay. Every business, every firm must determine their break-even point. But what is this break-even point? Whenever we are talking about a break-even point, we are referring to a point at which a business expenses and income are equal. So this business makes no profit and it incurs no loss. So we can say our break-even point is at point E under our normal profit, whereby our average costs are equal to our average revenue. Then we also have a situation whereby now we must shut down the firm if perhaps your business is not doing so well. But how do we tell if whether this is the point where we should shut down the business? The shutdown rule is when the lowest point of the average variable cost curve is higher than the market price. Market price, which is the average revenue, which is the marginal revenue. So let us look at the shutdown rule of a firm. When will a business shut down? A firm should consider shutting down when their average variable costs are equal to their average revenue. Initially, we were looking at marginal cost, marginal revenue, average revenue curves. So now, in order to determine the shutdown point of a business, of a firm, we must introduce the average variable cost curve. And in this case, we have the average variable cost curve represented by this curve here, AVC, and we are saying the firm should shut down if AVC is equal to AR. So it should shut down at point C, whereby AVC is exactly equal to AR. So this firm is at its lowest point. So they must shut down if it cannot meet its average variable cost. This is because average revenue is less than average variable cost. Firms will not keep on producing because the firm cannot meet its operational cost. Any point below the shutdown, the firm will sell no products at all. When we introduced topic 6, we explained the different characteristics of a perfect competition market structure. How can we classify the rest of the market structures? The characteristics that they imposed are linked to the following classification categories. The first thing you should consider is the number of firms, in no particular order. The number of firms that are in that particular market structure, the nature of the products which are being supplied, and the control over price. Does that market structure have control over price? Are they price takers? Are they price makers? And then barriers to entry. Is it easy to enter or exit this kind of market structure, or is it restricted? And then collusion. Can businesses come together and collude? And then availability of information together with the size of products, of profits and output. Those are some of the characteristics that we can use to classify if whether a market structure is perfect or any type of an imperfect market structure. Whenever we are dealing with two parties, one might take advantage of the other. So in this case, we are looking at customers and suppliers. The Competition Act was established to investigate and evaluate restrictive business practices, and it makes sure that the market is in favor of the public interest and functions as such. So what is the role of the Competition Commission? Their role is to investigate, control, and evaluate any restrictive business practices, abuse of dominant positions, and measures in order to achieve equity and efficiency in the South African economy. They aim to ensure that there is equity and there is efficiency in the economy. They try to do so by giving all South Africans equal opportunities to participate fairly in economic activities to make the economy more efficient. So what can businesses do if they are not happy with the fine that is imposed on them by the Competition Commission? Remember, if they are not following the accurate business practices that are enforced in the Competition Policy Act, they will be charged with a fine. However, if they feel as if the fine imposed on them, they are not happy with it, they can approach the Competition Appeal Court and lodge a complaint there. The Competition Act in South Africa was introduced in terms of Competition Act of 1998. It was introduced to promote competition in South Africa and to achieve the following objectives. The first objective was to promote the efficiency of the economy. Like we've been saying, the competition policy aims to achieve efficiency in the economy and provide consumers with competitive prices and a variety of products. It also aims to promote employment and encourage South Africa to participate in world markets and accept foreign competition in South Africa, therefore enabling SMEs to participate in the economy and allowing previously disadvantaged people to increase their ownership of businesses. Okay, is it successful? Sometimes and sometimes not. And some of the reasons why the competition policy is not successful is because fines are sometimes too lenient and not acceptable to some parties. Some people feel superior to the law, and there is frequency of investigations into collusive behavior. Too many competitors still preventing affirmative action. For example, young black industrialists entering into the market. Triple BEE. The goals of the competition policy is to prevent monopolies and other powerful businesses from abusing their power. Remember, they are monopolies, they are the only providers, so it means that they have full control, they have power over the consumers. And it also aims to regulate the formation of mergers and acquisitions to exercise market power, to stop firms from using restrictive practices like price fixing, dividing markets. And then the institutions that regulate unfair competition in South Africa, we have the Competition Tribunal, the Competition Appeal Court, and the Competition Commission.